I just wanted to quickly read a section of this book that I had totally forgotten to read to you guys because it came up in a conversation, and I thought this would be very good. So this is at the end of the chapter called Diaspora in Melanson's Perfectibilists on the Illuminati, the creation and the life of the Illuminati Lodge, and quite a elaborate members list. But what's important is also this is the beginning, or one, no, not the beginning, but one of the major points at which German thinkers become critically important for the destiny of Europe, and especially for the idea of liberation. And then on top of liberation, this idea of what would be ideal. What is the ideal way of life? Now, it is out of this milieu of thought that Rousseau becomes a big, big deal. And there's even a specific book. I should just look it up in here and remember to refer to it at some point. But it's that Rousseau and quite a number of European smart guys, they didn't really have that much information about the Western, about the American continents and the stories and how Native Americans behave. They really, really, really did not really know. They are where we get the noble savage and all that. We criticize it as like, oh yes, that this was this horrid idea that the Europeans had. This, without the noble savage stuff, there is no Black Lives Matter. There's nothing on the left. The left has nothing without the noble savage, not just mythos, the whole concept. If you just didn't have anything and your society was barely surviving, you wouldn't have problems, such as whether to choose the high-calorie sweet item or the high-calorie salty item. You would just, you wouldn't have to choose between what type of bottled water you want, the bubbly one, or the spring water, or the filtered, extra oxygenated Ceylon water. If you were worried constantly about drinking something that would make you shit your whole intestinal tract out of your ass, and that's how everybody learned about in your tribe about something called Giardia, then see, you would be enlightened with your intestines coming out of your ass. All right. On November 15th, 1790, the Bavarian elector issued his final public denouncement against the Illuminati. Here, then, is an excerpt from the Fourth Edict. So remember, this what has happened is the Illuminati has a lodge in Bavaria. There's lodges all over. The strict observance no longer exists. The type of Knights Templar, the Germanic Knights Templar kind of stuff, all that's it ceased to exist. It is now all about the Illuminati lodge system, and standard Freemasonry, standard Masonic orders. The only other one that's the big deal is the Brotherhood of the Golden Rosy Cross, or the Rosicrucians. And apparently these two groups are working against one another. And the Rosicrucians do not have a problem with nobility, where the Illuminati do have a problem with, they call it inheritance. Later socialists took this ideology, the socialism, German socialist thinking, heavily based out of the thinkers from the milieu of the Illuminati. So inheriting wealth, they basically, it's like, no, us other wealthy and powerful people should decide exactly how much any one person can inherit. This is the very important idea. That they don't say exactly that. They say that inheritance is bad or something. There's a fundamental problem with it. What they mean is the idea of like Jefferson inheriting his land and fundamentally the people on it. No concept. It's not really discussed like, well, yeah, and he would have something bad would have happened to him if he didn't take care of all these people. If these people didn't eat, he would be unknown, and if you did know anything about him, he would be infamous. The elector has learned, partly by the spontaneous confession of some members, partly by sound intelligence, that despite the edicts of July 14, 1784, and August 16, 1785, and in the same month, 1787, the Illuminati still hold, albeit in smaller numbers, secret meetings throughout the electorate, but especially in Munich and the surrounding area. They continue to attract young men to the cause and have maintained a correspondence with secret societies and with members in other countries. They continue to attack the state and especially religion, either verbally or through pamphlets. Hence, the elector renews by the present edict these old prohibitions. Every speech, every printed book, or manuscript against religion and the state must be reported to the authorities or the elector himself, as well as any secret meetings. Those who have remained silent on these issues, having indeed been proven to have possessed information, will be severely punished. The denunciator, even if he was an accessory to the crime, will receive a cash reward along with the other, and his identity will be kept confidential. Any member who has assisted in a secret meeting, has recruited new members, or corresponded with secret societies or brothers in other countries, will be mercilessly punished by death. Any civil servant, or those in the military, any holder of beneficial office, a parish priest, must swear that he has not and will never form a part of the sect, or they'll be convicted of perjury and shall be punished accordingly. Obviously, the 1787 edict against secret societies and the Illuminati, despite its own threat of the death penalty, wasn't taken seriously enough by the conspirators. They continued making a nuisance, generally causing paranoia. A merciless reiteration of the death threat was thus deemed necessary. These official governmental decrees illustrate not only the frustration on Karl Theodor's part, but the very reason a secret society such as the Illuminati would have existed in Bavaria in the first place. An absolutist monarchical government could regularly violate the rights of its citizens. The despot decided what privileges each individual would enjoy, and everything according to one's station. Hence, this idea of inheritance. They couldn't conceive of what it would be like in a world where everybody voted and there wasn't really tiers of that. They couldn't conceive of what that would be like. They were just trying to make that happen, primarily in Germany. Just like Marx thought that socialism would triumph in Germany first. Instead, the triumph of the Illuminati happened in France in the Revolution. Moreover, if whatever you say or do is automatically scrutinized for possible subversion, what chance is there for a free society? The only recourse, it would seem, short of a revolution, is to operate in the shadows. After a brief skimming over of Abbé Beruel's memoirs illustrating the history of Jacobinism, Thomas Jefferson identified with the situation that had resulted in the formation of the Illuminati. He also couldn't resist taking the part of Weishaupt, while castigating the ex-Jesuit Beruel. To Bishop James Madison, Philadelphia, January 31st, 1800. Written by Thomas Jefferson, born 1743, lived until 1826. Dear Sir, I have lately, by accident, got a sight of a single volume, the third, of Abbé Beruel's Anti-Social Conspiracy, which gives me the first idea I have ever had of what is meant by the Illuminatism against which Illuminate Morse, as he is now called, and his ecclesiastical and monarchical associates have been making such a hue and cry. Beruel's own parts of the book are perfectly the ravings of a bedlamite. But he quotes largely from Weishaupt, whom he considers as the founder of what he calls the order. As you may not have had an opportunity of forming judgment of this cry of mad dog which has been raised against his doctrines, I will give you the idea I have formed with only an hour's reading of Barruel's quotations from him, which you may be sure are not the most favorable. Oh, I see, he wrote it as Weishaupt. So, Weishaupt seems to be an authentic philanthropist, capital P. He is among those, as you know the excellent Price and Priestley also are, who believe in the indefinite perfectibility of man. He thinks he may, in time, be rendered so perfect that he will be able to govern himself in every circumstance, so as to injure none, to do all the good he can, to leave government no occasion to exercise their powers over him, and of course to render political government useless. This is actually a good point that I can point out. This is why I needed to read this to you. Once Jefferson sums up what he perceives are Weishaupt's ideas, what you see is something that, I mean, does that sound terribly different than Stefan Molyneux? Now, when I was reading this a number of years back, like 2 or 3 years back, that was what was happening in my mind. So it is a form of idealism. The whole liberal concept is a form of idealism, and everybody has to choose whether they really believe that humans have sort of an endless destiny of perfectibility. This, you know, is Godwin's doctrine. This is what Robinson, Barruel, and Morse had called a conspiracy against all government. Weishaupt believes that to promote this perfection of the human character was the object of Jesus Christ. That his intention was simply to reinstate natural religion, and by diffusing the light of his morality to teach us to govern ourselves. His precepts are the love of God and the love of our neighbor, and by teaching innocence of conduct, he expected to place men in their natural state of liberty and equality. This is actually very important. So, Thomas Aquinas would say to place men in their natural state of dignity. And now, if it was equality, it would still be dignitas, because it's referring to a natural state, and the idea of equality, that, I mean, your natural dignified state, you are fundamentally equal. God is above you, the angels are above you, the spirits are kind of around you, and you and all other men are the same kind of creature. And and because you're above animals, it would make you different than other living creatures. And so that's a way that fundamental Catholic, Christian, and European ideas were starting to slowly become changed through the language of the Enlightenment and the language, quite specifically, of Freemasonry. When he's referring to liberty and equality, he's absolutely referring to an idea that is from Great Britain. This is applying to that you are no longer under the authority of the crown. Your wife cannot get fucked by the king before your eyes, and that it's just understood that that's how it's going to be. You know, it's that no, this is the way the lodge worked. Only free men were allowed in. This is why the White House could not have been built by slaves. It was the whole point of Prince Hall Freemasonry is they were all freed and then made stonemasons. And then equality, because everybody is on the level. They're all Masons. That this is specifically out of that Scottish tradition that's so bristled under the power of Britain. They hated the British. and fought them and fought them and fought them. And one of the key groups that made this possible were the Freemasons. The British imitated Scottish Freemasonry because they were so impressed by its they were impressed by it, so they imitated it. This is not odd for the British. That's how the British are. They like other things, and they take what works very, very well for them, like tea. He says, no one ever laid a surer foundation for liberty than our Grand Master, Jesus of Nazareth. He believes the Freemasons were originally possessed of the true principles and objects of Christianity, have still preserved some of them by tradition, but much disfigured. The means he proposes to effect this improvement of human nature are to enlighten, he's quoting Weishaupt now, to enlighten men, to correct their morals, and inspire them with benevolence. Secure of our success, says he, we abstain from violent commotions, to have foreseen the happiness of posterity, and to have prepared it by irreproachable means, suffices for our felicity, the tranquility of our consciences. No. The tranquility of our, consciences, is not troubled by the reproach of aiming at the ruin or overthrow of states or thrones. As Weishaupt lived under the tyranny of a despot and priests, he knew Weishaupt had a lot of the Jesuit order kind of ran education and stuff like that, and he bristled under the Jesuit order. He knew that caution was necessary even in spreading information and the principles of pure morality. He proposed, therefore, to lead the Freemasons to adopt this object, and to make the objects of their institution the diffusion of science and virtue. He proposed to initiate new members into his body by gradations proportioned to his fears of the thunderbolts of tyranny. This has been an air of mystery to his views, was the foundation of his banishment, the subversion of the Masonic order, and is the color for the ravings against him of Robinson, Beruel, and Morse, whose real fears are that the craft would be endangered by the spreading of information, reason, and natural morality among men. Who might argue with Thomas Jefferson? He was surely an Illuminist at heart. The few things he might have caused to debate, however, would have been over the issue of the sovereignty of the individual. The Illuminati believed in technocratic rule. Weishaupt won. Weishaupt won. His ideas have won Germany for a long time. Despite all the rhetoric about equality, what constitutes true liberty and Weishaupt's insistence on the evils of private property? Jefferson was no communist, but Weishaupt was definitely one of the original founts from which that ideology emerged. My own feelings have changed somewhat over the years as more of the real story became clear, but one of the most unwavering impressions is that Weishaupt was a coward. He concealed his activities for almost 10 years, and when he finally identified rather than take responsibility, he fled. Certainly, if his conduct toward those under his command is any indication, he was at least a dictator and a tyrant. I further take issue with the very subversive nature of the enterprise, slithering in the shadows and infiltrating at the very core of society. This is contemptible. If the Illuminati had any modicum of integrity, they would have suffered the consequences for their beliefs at the very beginning. The founding fathers of America certainly did. State your grievances in the open. Preach your doctrine on a street corner. Anything other than the way in which Weishaupt et al. Had conducted themselves. Everything we know about the order proves that. After all was said and done, and in spite of protestations to the contrary or lofty-sounding ideals, ascendancy to power was the real agenda. 4 years after he quit the Illuminati, mostly due to the totalitarianism of Weishaupt, Baron von Knigge, having had immeasurable experience as a perfectly legitimate witness, honestly and intelligently wrote, "As a rule, under the veil of secrecy, dangerous plans and harmful teachings can be accepted just as well as noble intentions and profound knowledge, because not all members themselves are informed of such depraved intentions, which sometimes tend to lie hidden beneath the beautiful facade. Because, for the most part, unknown superiors lie in ambush, and it is unworthy of an intelligent man to work according to a plan which he does not fully see, for those whose importance and goodness he is responsible, so to people whom he does not know, whom he must bind himself to, without them binding themselves to him, because they, secret societies, cost time and money, because they soon become the assembly places for adventurers and idlers, because they favor various species of political, religious, and philosophical schwärmerei, zealous or insane enthusiasm, because a monkish esprit de corps prevails in them and brings about much harm. Finally, because they provide the opportunity for cabals, discord, persecution, intolerance, and injustice against good men, because they are not members of such an order, or at least not the same order." That's the other reason I wanted to make sure to read this, because at the time, the MRAs, the PUAs, and the MGTOWs were all making videos about each other. Roosh was starting to get in trouble. This was a while back. Roosh was starting to get in trouble. I think this was around the time of the meetups, if I remember correctly. And so there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to be like, no, gentlemen, so much of this that we're seeing has happened before. History does repeat itself, just not exactly the same way. All right, there we go.